Okay, I got in. I think there was some hosting issue here. So getting back to what we were doing last week, I shared the documentation and also some of the files where you could have a look at it. We looked at Photoshop, we looked at the screens, we looked at setting up the environment. We also discussed a few things like what it means by resolution, physical size, color models, stuff like that. Don't worry, as we go on, we will be using these things. So as you start using it, you will know what these things mean. Today, oh, by the way, last week we also created few things with the brush, line tool and other rectangle tool and stuff like that. We also looked at two color things, or rather coloring two ways. Or we can say color attributes of the elements. One is called the foreground color. The other one is called the background color. So there are two colors that we keep when it comes to drawing stuff, right? And then there is also, when it comes to lines, there is line thickness, line style, things like that. We also looked at the eraser, okay? So today we go on, now last week we created things. This week we are trying to edit what is already there, the existing material. So to do that, remember I talked about something called non-destructive editing. So that's the best thing about Photoshop, that we do not destroy the image when we are editing it. Okay, so let me open up a file with Photoshop, a simple one, and let me share the screen with you. Okay, maybe too big. Right, let me also make this size fit on screen. Okay, now that's another very important aspect here. This part, it's under view. You can zoom in, zoom out, fit on screen, 100%, 200% print size. Generally, when you're editing, we use fit on screen so that it will fit to whatever screen size you have. Sometimes you might need to have 100%, which you will see here at the bottom left corner, 100% of the image. Sometimes you might also need the print size, right? So in my case, 100% is the print size because it's a photograph. But since I have a smaller window, let me go back to fit on screen. All right. Okay, here I am with my photograph. It's a fairly simple photograph. Let's see what I can do to this photograph without destroying the photograph. Now, if you notice, it's very brownish kind of thing, but if you look at the tongue here that is coming out, if it is not clear, you can always zoom in, right? Now that's a little pinkish there. And you also notice there's some green here. And if you're noticing why these boxes are coming, that is because this is a fairly low resolution photograph. That's why when we zoom in, we see the dots here. You see, it's not a very good quality, as in high quality photograph. It's okay for our editing. All right. So here we have the photograph. Now notice what was on the right hand side here. On the right hand side. So we have some stuff at the bottom right hand corner. Starting from the first one, says link layer, FX, then there is a mask, then there is adjustment layer, then there is folder or new group, and then there is a new layer. And of course, the last one is to delete a layer. I have a background layer right now. So as it is, I can't do much with it. So what I can do is either convert this into a regular layer, or I can make a copy of that. So let's say I make a regular layer. I double click there. I get this window. It says what do you want to call it. Let's call it original. Right. I double click there. I got this screen, and then I type original and say okay. When I do that, notice that lock went away. So this is just a regular layer now. Now, before you proceed, my advice is please save this file. Otherwise, halfway through, if a power goes off or something happens, your computer gets stuck, you lose everything you're done. So go to save as and probably save it as the same name, but make sure it is PSD, that is Photoshop original format. So if you save it as a PSD file, remember I opened a JPG file and I'm saving it as a PSD file. Don't save it as a JPEG file, because JPEG file you save after doing all your work, as in all your editing is done. Now we are going to play with this image. So I want the original source file as it is. So right now, if you notice, it was JPG here. Right now it is PSD here. Okay. I also converted the background layer to a regular layer. I called it the original. If you want, you can also take another copy of that by dragging here and dropping to this little icon on the right bottom. Here you have another copy. So if you want to destroy the image, you should still get a copy and do that. Okay, let me delete that because I'm not planning to destroy the image. So my original, I'll keep it as it is. Okay, to start playing with this photograph, I use this icon here. It says adjustment layers. When I click that, I get a set of submenus, starting from the first one: solid color, gradient, pattern. I'm not interested in these three. Then if there is brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, stuff like that. Now I'm interested in these things. Okay. So let's start with, let's say, brightness and contrast. Now when I do that, I get another pop-up here. And if you notice the layers, it added a new layer here, right? So that's a brightness contrast layer. What does that mean? My brightness contrast changes I'm going to do to this photograph will not be applied to the original photograph, but it is living on top of that. Meaning if I don't like the adjustments, I can delete the adjustments. That way I am not destroying my original photograph. Now, whatever I do here, it also shows real time. Now, for example, if I change the brightness, let's say to the left, now see, it's changing. Now, if I go here, again, it's changing, right? So it's a real-time change that I'm doing. So I can also play with the contrast. Now here very dull, here very dark. Now see, the brownish became more brown here. Pink green became more sort of colorful. So if I want it, I can just leave it there. And the fact that I have an eye here means I can turn off, turn on. Now see, when I turn off, this is without the brightness contrast effects. When I click here, it is with the brightness and contrast effect. Now we see, yes, it's a little brighter now after applying that. But the thing is this, it did not destroy my photograph. If I don't like it, I can either turn that off here or I can completely delete that, get rid of it. I'm back to my original photo. So this is called non-destructive editing, right? Opposite to destructive editing. I can do the same thing by going here, okay, and playing with some adjustments, right? Now, for example, brightness and contrast. Okay. Now, see, there is no layer here. I can do the same thing. See, I can do the same thing. I say, okay, no layers. And I can't go back unless I go to window and history and then start deleting, you know. So this was the brightness contrast effect, and this is before that. I hope you understand that non-destructive versus destructive way of doing the same thing. I did the same thing. First method, I did it with a layer here. So these are special layers. These are called adjustment layers, right? So from here, I added an adjustment layer. So likewise, you can play with the others. Now here's another one, levels. Level is where it applies uniform adjustment of light. For example, if I go here, it becomes dark. If I go here, it becomes very light, you see? Or I can keep this in the middle and then play with the darkest colors, right? Now there, darkest color, or on this side it's the lightest colors. See? So basically what we're doing here is we are playing with the range of colors. Now the range starts from here and stops here. And the midpoint is somewhere here. So I can bring the midpoint wherever I want. Now let's say you need a very light photo. Okay, here we go. Right? And again, if you don't like it, get rid of it. There it's gone. Right? Or similarly, you could go and try something else. Let's say curves. This is another adjustment where we play with the, we can change the curve and then we still adjust the distribution. Now see, again, we are playing with the distribution. Darker, lighter, again, I can move this dot everywhere I want, anywhere I want, right? So these are, again, different ways of playing with your photo. Now see here, with the effect, original effect, right? So let's get rid of that also. I think I like the first one, the brightness contrast. That was actually giving a better output to my photo. But anyways, let's see. Oh, by the way, I could add more than one also. Now I can adjust this. Let's say I do this, right? I'll show you another one. Now let's say I need to have a let's say give an effect as if I used a nice lens for this. Then you can go to gradient. Let's see what happens. It's like, you know, using a color lens. So let's change the color to, now this red, by the way, is coming from here, the red that we selected here, right? Let me change the color to something bluish, maybe. No, something brownish, maybe. Right, now let's try to give an adjustment layer now with a gradient. Now that's the color I'm getting. See, I could give various adjustments, like reverse color is where I start from the top to bottom. Okay, so it's going from transparent to whatever color I've selected. Right, so that's the color. Or black to transparent, not black, actually dark gray. This is my background color. This is just the foreground color. Okay, so you might want to do this. You might want to do this. And if you want to adjust the application of this color, you can play with the fill effect. Now I have applied 100% fill. Now see, as I move to 100%, it's 100%. If I move to 0, it's 0%. If I start applying it somewhere here, you notice the effect, right? You notice. Now sometimes you might want to apply this, but then you need to erase the animal part. You want to apply that effect only to the background. Yes, you can do that as well. Okay? So essentially, whatever you are doing here, you are not destroying the photo. Here's my original. That is the beauty of layer-based adjustments, right? So here, without the gradient, this is only the brightness and contrast. This is a curve. I might not like the curve, so I'll get rid of that. So here's brightness contrast. This is after applying the gradient fill. Right? You might like it, you might not like it. Right. So what are the other things you can do? There's all sorts of things. You can play with the vibrance of the photograph, hue saturation, color balance, black and white, you name it. Anything is possible. Let's play with the vibrance. Now, vibrance is about saturation of the color, how much colorful it is. Now see, when I move it here, you see it's becoming very colorful. The tongue is now more reddish. The greens are more greenish. You see? Very, very colorful. Here, very dull. You can go with this face is very dull. Yeah? Very dull versus very colorful. Right? Now, depending on your target audience, depending on what you are planning to do with this, you will apply various effects of this nature, whether it is saturation, brightness, contrast, whatever. Okay. Let me also, in the meantime, get hold of another photograph for editing. Let's bring in a maybe wedding photograph. I can open more than one photo. You notice it comes as tabs, right? Now, if you notice this photograph, it's a wedding photograph. Supposedly very colorful, but a lot of green here. These flowers, there is pink, there is purple, there is a bit of red here, and stuff like that. And what happens if I start applying some vibrance to this? You see, it is becoming very colorful now. You see, versus this, it was like this. Now it is like this. Okay, you might not like the, it's too much colors sometimes, but well, you can play with that, right? Play with it. Or perhaps you could give another effect, maybe let's say you want to make it a black and white, but give it like a old photograph kind of event, right? Now this is actually, we don't call it black and white, but it's grayish, right? But check this out, that very old photographic look. Yeah, where did this brownish color come from? Well, I have already selected it here, right? I have already selected that here. So now these are other effects you can do. In fact, you can now play with different colors now. See, reds, right? Or a yellowish. You can play with different primary colors also and see the effect of that, right? So essentially, we have all sorts of different things available, non-destructive, by the way. I need to reset this back to zeros. Not really, it wasn't zero, right? So let's get rid of that and then apply it again. No, it didn't go away. Okay. Let me apply black and white. And you notice it's not zero, you see. You can give a tint, any tint you like. Now this is just a color that is picked up from here. Let's say you like a greenish something there, right? You can adjust the colors. Now this is very light green or darker green, either way, or lighter blue, right? You can get all sorts of effects, pinkish, and you can give a very light tint of that also. Right? Again, when you say, okay, you are not destroying the photo. See, if you don't like it, turn it off. Right? Turn it off. Now, it is also applying the vibrance behind the tint color. Okay, so I hope you understand editing a photograph without destroying it. So I think the best way to do that is to play with each one of these and see what happens. Now let me turn off these two so that I can have another one. So let's say photo filter. Right, now what does that mean? Now this is like a lens attachment to your camera. Now if you are into photography, you may know there are attachments that we fix into our lenses to give evening effect, morning effect, UV cut effect, and stuff like that. Now here they've used a warming filter of 85. Now, if you notice, there are all sorts of, again, things available. Now, this is the one we played previously with the black and white. It's called the sepia tone filter, right? Let's try. Okay, here's underwater, right? Very light, sort of a greenish kind of thing, right? Here's another one. Warm filter, LDA. It gives like a warm afternoon kind of effect. 82. Yeah, it's dull colors, cooling filter. Or you can apply some more red to this, or more yellow to this, right? This is just like, the filters available in our mobile phone camera. You can straight away apply this and see what happens, or you can play with the adjustment. Now here, this is density, right? Now it's going here, it gets you like a very old photographic effect. This is not black and white or single tone. It is going towards this brownish color, right? 100% versus 0%. So you can play with how much of that you want to get very old kind of the photo effect. Okay, right. Let me have it there, and I can also see when I apply the black and white effect, it takes away all the colors, even the pinkish rose is gone. Now if I add the vibrance, I get a different effect if you notice the background. Yeah, so like I showed, you can add one or more effect to your photograph. Right. So we were looking at different ways to edit our photograph, isn't it? Also in a non-destructive manner, right? In a non-destructive manner. So what are the other things we can do with this? What else can we do with this? If I go back to that document I shared with you, we started off with adjustment layers, right? I hope you understand the role of adjustment layers. Now, basically, adjustment layer gives you an adjustment without destructing the photo. And you can also control how much of adjustment you want using this fill and opacity, right? Fill and opacity gives you how much of the adjustment you need. Now see, 0% versus 100%. If you want 50%, you can do it this way, right? So you can give an adjustment. Apart from that, you can also control the amount of adjustment you are giving to the photograph, right? Which is fantastic. You have full control over the photograph without changing. Now, especially, stuff like this requires verification from your customer. You have an effect and you send it to your customer and then ask, okay, what do you think? He think, no, this is very greenish or this is bluish or whatever, reduce it. Then if you have destructed the photograph, then you have a serious problem of going back, you see. But if you have a non-destructive photograph, then everything is fine. You have the entire original photo collection with you. And you can, again, readjust whatever you want without destroying your photograph. Right. So that's about non-destructive editing with adjustment layers. Now, if you notice here under file, there are two things: save as. Then there is also something called export. Right. Let's forget the rest of it. Let's start with save. Save doesn't ask any question. It will try to save to the format, whatever format the photo is. Now, this one is JPG. And you notice there is a star mark here, right? That means I have done some changes. Here also there is a star mark, which means I have done some changes to this also, right? So if you go to file and say save, it will save this photograph with all the changes you have just done. So if I say save, okay, now star mark is gone. It didn't ask me any question because I have already saved it to a PSD file. Now, what happens if I go to this and say file save? Well, it doesn't, right? Because that was originally a JPG file. Now I have adjusted and changed few things there. So it cannot be saved as a JPG file anymore. So it is asking me, instead of save, it has gone to save as now. You see? It's asking me, okay, do you want to save as a Photoshop file? There are lots of other choices available. Starting from Photoshop being the first one, there is also a large document format, PSB, BMP, CompuServe, GIF, DICOM, and then EPS, all sorts of things, and also, of course, JPG, right? Then there is JPG, stereo, PCX, PNG, all sorts of things are there, right? So now, since I've done some work here, meaning I've done some non-destructive editing, and I wish to give this to, let's say, my customer, right? How do I do that? Well, I shouldn't give him a PSD file because the customer might not have a Photoshop install, so it's useless for him to have a PSD file, right? So when we are giving to customer, we should give something where they can open without any special tool. So a JPG is the way to give it. Now, talking of that, there are three formats actually, very common three format that we are using today. The decision comes from what is the final use, right? Let's say it's a photograph like the one we are looking at here, where there are loads of shades. There are hundreds and thousands, maybe millions of shades here. So for a thing like this, you have two choices. One is JPEG format. The other one is the PNG 24-bit format. PNG stands for Portable Network Graphics. It's actually one of the latest formats available, much later than JPG. But it has two formats. One for less colored photos, stuff like cartoons and text and things like that, where the number of colors are very, very less. So you use PNG 8-bit format for that. But if you want to save photographs like this, you use PNG 24-bit format for that. But then again, having said that, now your customer might not have a program to view PNG file. So in that case, JPG is a safe bet. JPG also gives you other additional features when it comes to Photoshop. You can reduce the file size without reducing the quality of the photograph. I'll show you how to do that. So if you are dealing with photographs, customers, website, for example, you are designing something for a website, then a good format would be JPG, right? And if you are doing something for very older gadgets, maybe older computer browsers or whatever, or maybe you want to have some sort of a very crude basic animation, then you use GIF, graphic interchange format, which is one of the oldest format when it comes to images. Now, since I've done my work here, I can do further adjustment if I want, but I suppose I'm okay so far. So I can go to File. Let's say I don't want to save a PSD file. I can go to Save As and select JPG file here. Okay, JPG file format. Let's say couple one. Let's call it edit one. No, edit one. Edit one. Okay. So remember, edit one, I went to normal save as format. Okay. Now, when I do that, I get this pop-up here. Now, what does that mean? It is asking me a few things. Now, see, if you notice this slider here, on one side, on the right, I have large file. On the left, I have small size. But notice when I move here, something else is also moving here. This is the quality. So if I go to small size, my quality is very low. If I go to large size, my quality is maximum. I hope you understand the connection between the quality and the file size. Now I can also go from here. Let's say I need high quality. So quality number 8, file size is somewhere, let's say about 60%. Okay. Let's see what kind of change it brings me. And then on below this, I also have something called the optimizing algorithm, right? So there is baseline optimization, standard optimization versus progressive optimization. I'll leave it as it is. And also, if you notice, there is a preview button. Do you see any difference here when I make any changes? Now, let's see, I go to low quality. Low quality went to 3. Now, see, well, I can't see much changes. It's almost as good as the photograph, although the quality is low. No, I'll go with high anyway, right? And it also gives you a certain size, 277 kilobyte. Now, when I go to small size, see, it's 112 kilobyte. If I go to largest, it gives me 696 kilobyte. So let's go with, say, high, 277. Okay. Right, I saved it as a couple edit 1. Okay, so this is my okay, let me show you. Right, let me show you my screen here, or rather my Explorer screen, right? So these are my photographs. Let's go to view details. Now this was my original. Now notice 254 kilobytes, right? And after editing, it became 270. My gosh, it may have added few things there, although I selected high quality. Let me go back and say this time, without using save as, I'm going to use export. When you select export, I have export PNG, export as, export preferences, various things. Let me do it again. Export as from Photoshop. Right. Now see, it's a very smart way of handling the exports. So I have a, now, by the way, I started off with the original again, right? I'm not dealing with the edit 1 version which I saved. You notice I can play with my file format, JPG, GIF, all sorts of things are there. JPG, let's say, quality 60%. I could also reduce the photo size, right? Let me increase the preview here. Let's say now this is actually 2000 pixels wide. Let's say I want 1200, right? This is the canvas size, sorry. I'll leave it as it is. This is what I want to play with. I can reduce the size as a percentage. Let's say I want to have a 50% photo size, which gives me, no, that is a scale. Let's reduce it. Let's reduce it to, let's say, 1200. Okay, that gave me about 57.9. Okay, I think that is how it is. But let me say 50%. Right. You notice this became 50%. Let me reset this. Right, 50% of the size. And I can export now. I'll call it edit 2. So let's look at that again. Let me switch back to my file sharing. There you go. You notice My original was 254, my edit one was 270, but my edit 2 is 119, less than 50% of the file size. Now, if you notice the quality, it will be almost the same, right? Almost the same. Now, we can't see any visible change in quality, can we? This is one, here's another. Here's one, here's another, right? So visibly you don't see any difference. So this is good for, let's say, if you want to export something to your Facebook album or website or Flickr or whatever. Yeah. So the quality remains very good, but the file size is much smaller. So this was the original, right? This is after editing. Okay. And you can zoom in further. Then only you will see certain color issues, maybe quality issues. But then again, this, if you zoom in only, yeah. So we won't be zooming into photographs unless there's a reason for it. So we'll live with this. Okay. So let me get back to Photoshop again. Right. So that's what we talk about when it comes to file types or file exporting or file save or file save as, right? So there are three ways of saving. You either save if you have a PSD file, or you use save as, or you use export. If you are targeting to an audience outside, like say a mobile phone or a website, my suggestion is always go with export. Okay. And it's very flexible. Lots of changes, lots of adjustments you can do there. Right. Now, we've been playing with certain adjustments here. Let me get rid of all this. There are times where you don't have time to play with the photograph. You need a quick fix, right? There are automatic fixes available as well. Okay, automatic fixes available as well. Now, if you go to image and down here, you see auto tone, auto contrast, auto color. Sometimes they work. Let's see whether it works. I'm going to apply auto tone and see what happened. Nothing happened. Is it applied? We don't know. So we go to history and see, yes, auto tone applied. We didn't see any difference. Okay, auto contrast. Yeah, that is also applied, but no difference. Auto color. Yeah, a little change here if you notice, Nasi. Little change in color. So bit of color enhancement happened. Maybe this photograph is not suitable for that. Yeah. So let's go to this photograph. I'm going to get rid of all my adjustments and convert this into a standard layer. And let's see what happens. Auto tone. Oh, okay. Did you notice? It enhanced the colors of my photograph by just applying auto tone. But notice it didn't go into adjustment layer, right? What does that mean? It means that it destroyed my photo. So if you want to keep the original, you need now manually create a copy of that, right? And then apply your auto toning. Let's see auto tone. This is without auto tone, with auto tone. Yeah. So you see a bit of color enhancement has happened. So you go to auto contrast. Right. And auto color perhaps. Oh, okay. You notice that. What happened? The green is gone. Bit of red has come into the picture. Right. Now that I didn't do any manual adjustment. I just went to the image and applied it. Now, like I was saying, sometimes you might not have time to do lots of adjustments. You just need to check out and see whether Photoshop can automatically do the best for you. Just try that. most of the time it works depending on the program. You notice the deer, it didn't work properly because the color tones are all very, I would say it's not in a wider range. It's in a standard sort of a very smaller range, narrow band kind of thing. Now here we have a range of colors from green to blue to red to lots of things. So in a situation like that, you might have a better chance applying auto adjustments. Okay, so that's what you do with your normal standard image editing activities. So I got it from image, auto tone, auto contrast, auto color. Right now, what does auto color mean? Well, it does not color black and white photos. It won't do that. It will try to figure out the most appropriate colors from the photograph itself, and it will do some adjustments. Now, just to show that to you, let me open the image that we saved. Now we have a black and white photograph. Let's open that with Photoshop. Okay, this is the original that we saved, yeah? Not very good quality, but fine. Let's see what happens when I go to image and auto color. What happened? Let's take a copy of this so that we can see what we are doing. Image, auto color. See, it didn't color it as such, but it tried its best to adjust what is there. So that filter is not suitable for monochromatic photos, but it worked well here, right? I just want to show you that everything doesn't work everywhere. Okay, fine. So this is where we play with automatic things as well as adjustment layers. So we learned today about the adjustment layers. We also learn about auto changes. I mean automatic changes. Let's move on to another very important aspect when it comes to photo editing. That is removing unwanted objects. Now, that's a very, very important thing to do. As in, sometimes there are maybe unwanted people on the photograph, maybe unwanted things on the photograph, maybe there is dust particles, maybe trees you want to get rid of, all that. Yeah, it's come to think of it, it's not so easy. Now imagine I want to remove the girl from here or the boy from here. That might not be very easy to do, or maybe the flowers from here. Why it is not easy? Because if you notice the edges, right? See these edges, they're not very sharp, you see. So there's white, there's green, but then there's also a load of in-between things. So if I remove the white part, I will end up with this grayish in-between dots. Same with the face. So let me get back to the face. So to remove a face, right? Look, again, we have dots, right? And there are a lot of in-between colors. So it's very difficult to get rid of all the pixels unless you go like dot by dot by dot by dot and then erase it. Not so easy. But then again, we are with Photoshop. Photoshop also has all sorts of techniques to remove unwanted things depending on the photograph. So let me open something that we can play with. Right? In order to do that, let me get a photograph. Okay, I have a tarred road here, right? So let's zoom in, right? You notice these are stone particles, then there is a shoe here, and there is some white paint. Now, it will be very, very difficult to remove this white paint because again, there are, you notice colors in between colors, right? So the way we learn, it's not so easy, isn't it? Now, basically, I have two paintings here painted on the tarred road. I want to get rid of that, but it is possible. Okay, it is possible. Now, to get rid of unwanted things, there is more than one way when it comes to Photoshop. More than one way. So today we learn one. That is the brush, or we call it the healing brush. Where is that? Right. Now, when you go and click here, you notice there are a couple of things coming in. Spot healing brush, patch tool, and a few other things like red eye tool and content aware move tool and stuff like that. I'm going to use the first one, spot healing brush tool. Okay. Now, what does that do? Let's move there. And when I move it, you see I have a circle, right? I have a white circle. And you can use the square bracket on the keyboard to turn it smaller or larger, or you can go here and make the size now larger. One further, larger. Right? You can make the size smaller, larger, whatever size you want. But I suppose you should use the keyboard because that way you can adjust it in an interactive way. Right? So before I do anything, let me make this, or let me make a copy out of that. So because I'm destroying the image. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll make this circle a little larger and start painting here. Now when I paint, you see it's becoming a gray color, and I can also see what is under that. So I'm basically covering what I want to get rid of. In this case, the white arrow. I painted on that, keeping the mouse down. Let's see when I take my finger off mouse, what happens? It's gone. But there are some gray patches here, right? So you can paint further on that. That also will go. It's gone. Right? How did that happen? Well, it's not perfect because I see some gray patches. You see some gray patches. But then again, it worked magic, isn't it? It worked like magic. Let's try again. I take my hand away, gone. But not really, there's still some patches. But for most part, it's gone. Right? So if I do 100% out, well, looks like it is not there. So that is one way to get rid of things that you don't need off the screen. Okay. It's a very powerful one, the spot healing brush. I'll also show you another a photo. Let's say oops, that went to the wrong place. Let me open it. Right, I have a rather straightforward photograph. So let me zoom into her face and see whether there are any adjustments I can make. Now, if you notice, there is a birthmark here. You see that? And there is some other marks here as well. Right? So when I zoom in, only it comes. See? There is a mark here, there's a mark here, and stuff like that. Now, those marks, or even here, you can see some very dark red. it's not clear here, but it's clear here. That might not look nice. So even here, there is some things we can get rid of. Might be a birthmark. Now, see this one, if I use the spot healing brush, now the brush is too big for me now. So I make it smaller, and then I go and just click here. What happens? There, it's gone. Here, gone, 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 gone. Right? Very smart way to get rid of those marks, right? So I can get rid of. I use, by the way, the space bar and the mouse up and down to play with my zoom. So I go back again. Now this is too big. I make it smaller because you should get as small as possible. Click here, it's gone. Right? It is gone. Looking much better now. Right? So that's how you use the spot healing brush. If you notice, there was also another brush, right? There was another one called healing brush. So let me go back to my shoe. I don't like the fact that there's some residue here. So let's get rid of this. Luckily, I have my original here. Remember, that's a good thing to have. So let's play with my photograph again. This time I'm using the second one, the healing brush tool. And let's increase the size of this and see what happens. Oh, by the way, now you can't paint over this with the healing brush. When you do that, it says, okay, select source. So to use this brush, you need to go a little further, zoom out a little bit. What it does is, it tries to copy from some place and replace what is here. So to copy, I have to use the Alt key and click somewhere outside. Maybe we call it the reference point. Let's say I would like to copy from here. So I use the Alt key on the keyboard and click. So when I do that, my cursor changes. Now I come and paint here. Now in this one, like I said, you have to first copy a target from someplace, use the Alt key, click here, and then come back. And see, when I move a mouse, now see what is happening. In fact, I can make the box larger. Now see, what is happening here is it is replacing from my selected place. Now I can just click and paint. I can start painting. Now see, when I move this, notice there is another cursor moving here. Right, that is the source location. So if I don't like that, I can always select another place and start coloring also. Job done. Right? If you zoom in, wow, you can't even trace what happened there. Right? That's another way to get rid of things that you don't like. Right? So both came from here. So we tried the spot healing brush and the healing brush. So coming back, so what did we cover today? We looked at non-destructive editing. How did we do that? We kept the original layer, and then we started on top of that layer, we started adding these adjustment layers. We played with few things. We played with the gradient, we played with the brightness control, vibrance, and stuff like that we played. That is number one. Number two, we also played with destructive editing. That is things like automatic leveling, automatic color adjustments, and things like that, which changes the photograph. And we also realize before you apply a destructive editing technique, you should take a copy of your layer. which is a good advice to have. Then we also looked at how to get rid of things you don't like on the photograph. So now for that, we looked at two techniques. We looked at healing brush and spot healing brush. Spot healing is where you paint over something and it goes away, which is suitable for spots on face. Even here, we looked at it. But then we realized when we tried to do it on this photograph, there was certain gray color residue, being left over. So in a situation like that, we tried a second one, that is the healing brush tool. Okay, where in that one we have to give a target location and a source location. We use the ALT key. We go and click on a place to copy from that place. That is called the source location. And then we come back and click on the target location where we want to change the colors. Right. So those are the two things we learned today. But there are a couple of other things also, like the patch tool, for example. And there are various ways of adjusting these things. Red dye is another tool where if you take photographs with, especially in the night with the flash on, you see the people with red dyes. So you can remove it very easily using Photoshop also. So all that we'll cover next week. Any questions?